Hey guys, so today we are going to talk about serverless and containers, so let's get into it. So the other day, one of my subscribers asked a very good question. He asked what my thoughts are on running a serverless solution such as AWS's Lambda functions or Firebase maybe, and doing that as opposed to doing something as running your own infrastructure. It kind of depends. You could run your own application using something like Heroku, or you could do it with Amazon, Google, whoever, Azure as well. Basically, you're running your own containers and all of that good stuff. And the perspective he was asking for was basically how these two approaches measure up against each other in kind of different contexts. So how do they measure up for a smaller company? How do they measure up for a larger company? And kind of what's the trend here? And security questions and such things. And I thought this is good. This is a good thing to kind of start off by. Well, it's a good thought, because I think that it will hopefully illustrate something that I think is fairly important. They're both really good, but for different reasons. And the core of what I'm going to try to tell you here is not that I'm going to say that one is better than the other. I want to touch on something that I think is forgotten a lot. And it is understandable that this gets forgotten a lot, especially by those who haven't been working professionally for a long time. And that is that the right answer to a question, which one is the better approach, may change depending on when you ask the question. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean that one solution is right for one moment and another solution is right for another moment. There's very little in terms comparing the benefits. We can absolutely do that, and we're going to touch on that. But I want you to if there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it is that I want you to remember that just because somebody says that something is really, really great, that doesn't mean that means that you should go and do that immediately. You have to ask the question, who is this person? What's the use case? Why are they saying that this is such a great thing, and for what situation? This is very often forgotten. No tech talk I've ever watched, or very few at least, start off by the person saying basically, this thing that I'm going to try to sell you in my presentation is great for these use cases. That's not how sales work, because that is what it is. It is, for the most part, sales doing that sort of presentation. So, with that defined, let's talk about the specifics. So, I will argue that when you are first starting out as a one-man show or one-woman show, speed is absolutely everything. Development speed, anything that you can do in order to get an off-shelf solution that saves you time is worth it. Because in the beginning, you don't have any type of volumes, and volumes changes absolutely everything. The two main things that affect how your infrastructure is going to work is volume. In other words, how many people do you have using your system? And the second thing is flexibility. In other words, how much customization do you need? And basically, the trend that I see is that this is not just true for serverless and for Lambda functions or whatever. It's actually true just in general. People have it so many people have asked me about this. People have it in their heads that the perfect solution is a one shot fire type of deal, that you build one thing and then you're stuck with it, or you build one thing and if you build the wrong thing, you have to rewrite the whole thing in something better. And that's not true, guys. It is not true at all. Not at all. In actuality, what usually is the norm in the IT is that a system starts out in one way, and then it mutates over time. Almost every single system out there in the world has what we call legacy. And legacy is a fairly broad term that programmers and software engineers and so forth use in order to describe something that used to be the way that you did things, and now there's a new way of doing things. So in the context of serverless and these types of solutions, I'll tell you exactly how things most likely are going to go for you and how things are going for me at my own startup. So what's going to happen most likely is that you start off with serverless. You're going to reap the benefits of having a very fast development process, because serverless is much quicker than running your own containers and managing your own infrastructure and so forth. And you get a lot of stuff for free. So you prototype, you build things, and you're going to fail over and over and over most likely. You're going to put a lot of experimentation and trying different things in order to find something that becomes a feasible business model for you. When that happens, you are going to spend a lot of time in the beginning developing your idea against different clients, because the clients are going to change their minds, they're going to have different requirements, and you're going to have to find different ways of making an income basically. And in that phase, you are basically just experimenting. So speed is everything. You think that it's perfection, but it's not. It's not about perfection. It's about just getting things to work, to get something feasible enough that somebody is willing to either use your system as a user, because trust me, when you only have a small amount of people using it, you can build stuff in anything. In absolutely anything. It doesn't matter. The only time things start to matter in terms of what you decided technically to use is either when you have such large amounts of people that you're pushing your hardware or your code to the absolute limit, or when you have a need for speed, where your entire business model is based on how fast you can do something. And usually that's not the case. So what's going to happen is most likely is that you're going to start out small scale. Something like serverless is perfect for that situation. You get to move very, very quickly. You're going to be able to prototype very quickly. You can throw things up in a matter of hours as opposed to much longer. You don't have to think about any type of maintenance and overhead and anything like that. And then finally, when your business model gets a little bit of traction and you start to realize that, hey, we're actually going to be able to make something out of this, that's when things start to change. Now, you are not going to rewrite the whole system. What's going to happen is that you are going to, which is the thing that most companies do, you're going to stay on the platform, you're going to work on the platform until you reach a point where you can no longer stay, where you have a feature that you need to build that you cannot accommodate as things are right now. That puts you in this magical moment where you have to decide, all right, do we try to shim this into the platform we are? Let's say that you need something from Firebase that Firebase can't actually give you. You're then going to have to ask yourself, okay, do we have enough confidence that we are going to need to rewrite this in another solution? Or do we do what most companies do? And that is to simply change the architecture of our application. What do I mean by that? Well, it's very simple. Remember that all the solutions that you built in, say, Firebase, they're still working. They are not broken just because you have a feature now that you can't support by using Firebase, most likely. So the economic or smart thing to do here, it depends on your definition, of course, but what's going to most likely be the best option is to take that new feature that you can't fit into Firebase and make that into a container. Put Docker with it, with databases and so forth, to actually have two parallel solutions running next to each other. And what happens then is that you are now going to refer to, well, it depends on exactly when, but you're going to refer to the Firebase solution as the legacy system. That's the old way of doing things. And now the new way is to do it through containers. And you should know this, a lot of companies, even my company I'm working for today, And Ticketmaster did the same thing. They all have this concept that because a migration, when you change a computer system from one thing to another, it's very rare that you rewrite the whole thing in one go, because it's very costly to do that. It's much more efficient to move things over time. Some legacy systems live for years. I mean, think about the really, really large companies. Do you think they rewrite their whole system every time they realize that, hey, there's a limitation here? No, they don't. They break out that feature that requires a new solution. They make a solution for that, and then they make these two systems work together. And if you think about it, that's exactly what microservices is, or service-oriented architecture. That's exactly how it is. In a service-oriented architecture or a microservices situation where you may have hundreds of these services, you don't rewrite every one of them. Some of them are going to be really old and some of them are going to be really, really new, depending on where in time you're making the changes, right? So that's my answer. My answer is that you have to start out with the quick and easy solution that allows you to move as quickly as possible, and then you migrate over to the long-term container type solution, basically. Because if you start out with containers, you can start out there, but it's not going to give you as much, because at the end of the day, it's solving a problem that you don't have at that point in time. It will solve your problem when you have that problem, but get the problem before you solve it. Have a great day.